Welcome to the Hunt Backcountry podcast presented by Exo Mountain Gear. Our guest in this episode, Ryan, is one of you guys, a listener of the show, and he joins us to share a story about a black bear hunt that he had in Alaska. This is a do-it-yourself hunt, a fun adventure that includes, of course, a flight and then some pack rafting, dealing with coastal tides, and ultimately Ryan and his buddy finding success. And they talk all about the experience, both the planning, the logistics, the process, and of course the hunt itself. And along the way, we discuss many other topics. So whether you're interested in hunting black bears in Alaska or not, there's definitely some things you can take away from this episode. And being a listener story, I want to remind you guys that we're always interested in those. Sometimes we'll do a before and after the hunt, where we will discuss your hunt plans before the hunt itself and then do a hunt follow-up after. Or sometimes like this one with Ryan, we just join you after the hunt and hear all about the adventure. If you have some hunt plans that you think would be good to share on the podcast, reach out, send us an email to podcast@exomountaingear.com. Well, this episode is a long one. It goes quite in depth and I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to keep this intro short. Let's get straight to it. Here is this conversation with Ryan. Well, let's start with you, an introduction, background, any context you want to share, whether it's personal or hunting or otherwise, just for the audience to get to know you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm name's Ryan Tanner, originally from the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic in Maryland. And I've been hunting since I was 10 years old. Big family, big family history of hunting deer, mostly in like the Appalachian Mountains. My parents, grandparents had a camp out in the Appalachians, even though they lived around the Baltimore area. So I've been hunting since I was probably 10 years old, deer hunting. And I imagine it's most people's experience where you're a little kid. Your parents are like, yeah, Walmart hunting stuff is good enough. And then you freeze your butt off walking through the snow and sitting on rocks,
Yeah.
doing deer drives. And come to find out, fast forward a bunch of years, come to find out, like talking with my dad, the way he always set up the drives was actually for his own benefit to get a shot on a deer and none for mine. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of my hunting as an adult had came from moving from there to Minnesota, and I was archery deer hunting on some state wildlife management area. And I always tell this story because it's such a turning point in like my hunting career, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
I've been out there, I don't know how many days waiting on deer, and the deer hunting's good in Minnesota, and they get good big deer, but just not seeing anything, right? And I remember one particular morning in September, I'm in this hang on tree stand or this climber tree stand, and I hear a bunch of people walking through the woods, and I could even hear them. It was still quiet. I could hear them loading shotguns and all this stuff. And I'm like thinking to myself, there's no way this many people are squirrel hunting right now. What is going on? Well, right at legal shooting time, man, it was World War III for like 2 or 3 hours. It's just it was you could never not hear more than a few seconds without a shotgun going off. And I'm sitting in this tree stand. Obviously, the deer hunts were over, but I'm sitting in this tree stand going, I don't know what they're doing, but it is way better than sitting in this tree stand with a bow. And it was duck season opener, is what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I became quite the avid waterfowl hunter after that. And still to this day, we try to go to North Dakota every year. And I got some buddies that live in Kansas, and so we'll go down to Kansas and stuff. But but that kind of like got me back into waterfowl hunting because I had been in the army for a little while and all that. And all that kind of dies off. Trying to get your feet under you when you're younger, start a career, back to school, all that. Um, and so fast forward to like COVID. Um, my dad, he always wanted to go on an elk hunt, and he had been on one previous one before. In Colorado, him, my brother, and my uncle went on a guided hunt. And it was an absolute boondoggle. Like my uncle got elevation sickness. They had to come down from camp. The guide service that they used, even though they're in national forest, told them they could only hunt this side of one mountain, and they never saw an elk. A lot of money and time burned for absolutely nothing. And so I thought it'd be nice, given me and my brother kind of in a good state with our careers and all that. Like maybe we should gift him for Father's Day an elk hunt. Let's take him on an elk hunt. And so it went down this whole path of learning big game in the West and the draw systems and all that stuff. Led us to going on a hunt in Montana. We were successful with a cow. Unfortunately, he had a shot at a bull, but just because of his knees and his age, he couldn't. Like we're staring at a bull, and we said, you got to cut. Oh man, I don't know, 400 yards off the distance between you and that timber line because he had a 30-06 and he's not comfortable past like 250 yards with it. And I'm not even kidding. We had probably 10 minutes of daylight left before legal shooting time was over. And he looked at me and he said, I can't cut that distance.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's a real shame, man, because we are staring at the bull at the edge of the woods and he can't do anything about it. So we ended up settling for a cow, but he had his opportunity.
Yeah.
So it was a much better hunt than his first experience. And fast forward, like part of that is that previous year, I went to Colorado. I mean, full blown, like as green as can be, as much knowledge as I could pick up off of Onyx Maps and some podcasts and YouTube. I did an archery hunt in Colorado, just showed up and hunted just to learn about elk, learn where they live, all of that. I'm big on like context and kind of having a background on things. So I'm really big on like prepping for future things. And this is where the bear stuff comes in. Well, somebody had wounded on opening day, wounded a 5x6 elk, and it died back in these like shrubs, right in the edge of this young aspen stand. And as I'm kind of working through it, I'm like, oh, there's some bear poop. Oh, there's some more bear poop. And then there's some flies. And I'm like, that's some really fresh bear. There are bears here. Well, I kicked 4 black bears off of that elk carcass. And so my elk hunt every morning became a bear hunt because I bought the over the counter like $100 tag that can accompany some units. And I had, I think, in the 3 mornings that I hunted that carcass, I had 11 bears inside 15 yards.
Wow.
And I could never release an arrow because that oak brush was so thick I could never make a clean shot. And that man, that gave me an itch with black bears I could not scratch. And
Hmm.
so the following spring, I went to or 2 springs ago, I went to Idaho for spring bear. Same thing kind of happened. I took my daughter, who at the time was 11. She really was curious about all this. She likes hunting and she wanted to do something like exciting. So I took her with me, knowing, with an 11-year-old, there's only so much I can do. And I was accepting of that because again, I'm learning bear hunting. Found a beautiful big cinnamon boar. 3 days I chased him and I could never get in a good shooting position to close the deal for 3 straight days.
Wow.
But it was a blast, which led me to, hey, we should start looking into Alaska. And so, me and my wife's cousin, who is a great hunter, that kid does his due diligence and he will work his butt off. And he's just really well versed in whatever situation you put him in. He's a guy you can trust.
That's cool. Hey, let me hit pause because I want to call something out. Uh, you went out of state learning bear hunting. You don't really have experience. You don't have a ton of knowledge.
Mm-mm.
And you took your 11-year-old daughter with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's freaking awesome. And part of what like I want to call out is just go. Like,
Yeah,
you
just
know,
go.
there's just people like we get this we and part of this is coming off of like recent emails. There was one guy who emailed me. like through the podcast and was just complaining and making excuses about tags and
Yep.
blah blah blah, and he wants to hunt but he can't, and not, and I'm like, sure, there's reasons people can't do stuff,
Hmm.
but there's so many excuses out there that keep people from doing stuff.
100%.
um and you just have to go. Like there was another
That's it.
guy, a totally different guy I talked to this week, who was asking me questions, and he had no idea what my background was in terms of my hunting
Sure.
journey. And I am
Yeah.
the first person to admit that today in 2025, I've had amazing hunts, and a big portion of that has come from, you know, working with EXO and the podcast and everything else. So
Sure.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying I haven't had special opportunities, because I have.
Yeah.
What this guy doesn't know is 12, 15 years ago, I didn't know anything about hunting in the mountains. I didn't have any connections. I
Yeah.
didn't have any resources like Go Hunt, Onyx, the million things that exist today, which are helpful.
Hmm.
I literally just was a regular guy from the Midwest and said, I really want to go chase elk in the mountains.
Yep.
I know no one who does this. I know
Yep.
nothing about this.
That's it.
I have a young kid at home. I have all of the excuses of why I can't, shouldn't, won't, blah, 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 blah. But I'm just going to go.
Yep. That's it. And I've looked at the every trip I go on now. I think the first trip to Colorado in archery, that was a huge eye opener to me, to setting expectations. And you hear about it, like I listen to Corey, Elk Talk. I listen to Elk Talk too, and they always try to like. A lot of them talk about setting expectations, for yourself, and kind of having like these secondary objectives you want to achieve on the hunt. Like, don't make killing the only thing you're going out there for.
Mhm.
And that first trip was a real big eye opener to that, to like, you can look all you want on the map, especially if you're from the Midwest or the East or wherever. You get out there in Colorado, man, and you go, okay, I saw this on the map. One, it doesn't look anything like I thought. Two, these mountains go literally forever. How am I going to find one elk in a million acres of terrible terrain?
Yeah.
And so after that trip, every trip I've had since then, um, and I've gone elk hunting every fall since then. I have some really good friends. I am in a position that maybe most people don't find themselves in, and it's by coincidence. But I have a really good family friend who he's a ranch manager for a huge ranch in Southwest Montana. Um, and so now I know him, I know the owner, and so that like the easy button to go elk hunting, and it's still mostly there's private and public, so it's a mix of both. But that is kind of the easy button, because they kind of have their finger on like where elk are quite often.
Hmm.
Um, so that part, like, yeah, that's a nice thing to have like in your back pocket. But every trip, I never make killing the center of the focus anymore. I make it basically it's a camping adventure with a tag in my pocket. That's how I look at every single trip.
Yeah.
That way, if I walk away with nothing, well, it wasn't nothing. I definitely learned stuff about the thing I was chasing. And I still had a killer time. I wasn't at work, beating my head against the wall, thinking about what else I could be doing.
Hmm. Yeah. It's
Um,
great perspective.
yeah, yeah. And that's the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons I took my daughter, because we were homeschooling after COVID. And that was the biggest reason I took my daughter was I have a lot to learn anyway. So I can't put too much pressure on me to actually come back with a punch tag. So I'm just going to take her. We're just going to have a good time camping, and I'll try to learn as much as I can, given the hunt I'm capable of doing while she's with me. And I will give it to her. Like, she's in gymnastics and all that stuff, so she's, I mean, wildly strong for her size and her age at the time, and still now. And I put 30, I think it was 20, no, 27, 28 pound pack on her back, and had her carry her own stuff. The only thing I carried for her was her food,
Wow.
and she just was happy as a clam walking over deadfalls in those spring runoff streams. And hiking through snow on the on the shady side of mountains to get up the sides, and
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how well she took it. It was eye opening for me too. Like it was a growing thing for me as a parent to see like, oh, I took her really really far out of her element, and she completely rose to the occasion, which I didn't really expect. I didn't go to it with that expectation.
Yeah. I mean,
And
kids
so
are
now
adaptable, right? Like
they
you
really
expose
are.
it to them and they adapt.
Yes.
But if you never
Yep.
expose it to them, you never give them the opportunity to adapt.
You got it. You got it. And given, like now she's back in school mostly because the kids in her youth group all go to school. So she wanted to be with them, which is fine. Um, but now she's bent. I mean, bent on us going on an elk hunt this fall. So I said, okay, I will. If you are that bent on it, I will. We'll find a first rifle tag in Colorado, and I'll take you out of school, and we'll go. And my perspective on that is, I get it, school, all that stuff. Man, we only have there's a very finite set of time between them being capable to do these types of things we're talking about and them being out of our house. And then narrow that down to the times hunting season happens, right? You only got a handful of falls. You can make these types of memories for the rest of their lives.
Hmm.
So I put a lot of emphasis on that.
Yeah, that's so good, man. So good. Well, that was a detour. Let's.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we could just talk all day and probably never get to your hunt story. Um,
Yeah, maybe.
so let's circle back.
Yes.
You have these encounters with bears. You have this bear hunt with
Yes.
your daughter.
Yep.
You have, you have to scratch this itch now, this kind of
Yes.
like fascination and interest with bears.
Yep.
How did you take it from there to Alaska?
Alaska has always been the top of the mountain as far as hunts, right? Um, Seemed like a mix of like adventure, also higher success, also a lot of things I've never done. The pack rafting, never done it before. Um, and so living on Lake Superior, I mean, we have tons of water. We can go do all that stuff on. So water is familiar to me. The bush up here in the Keweenaw, pretty familiar to me. A lot of public land, a lot of places to get lost up here. So it's not too far out of the ordinary. Um, and so we looked into like what places have pretty good success rates. Like what places could we go to have like at least a good chance of success and the hunt we're looking for. And so we did kind of create some criteria around what are we looking for in a hunt. And the biggest thing was like adventure. We want adventure and a good chance at a bear. We don't have to guarantee a bear, but at least an opportunity to get a decent bear. And we know it's general knowledge, southeast Alaska, they have big black bears. So we looked into a draw up there, and what are the odds? We finally we drew in our first attempt, which fast forward 2 years, and one of the things we were going to talk about was the draw. Up results just coming out last week. Yeah, didn't draw for the second year in a row. So how lucky was it that we drew the first time that we
Yeah.
put in? Um, and so the way, and I'm not sure how much you go down the rabbit hole um, on other podcasts. I don't really heard you talk too much about like how the draws work, but for people who are unfamiliar, in Alaska it's completely random, and in each species you get basically like up to 6 raffle tickets per species, and you can divide those any way you want. You could put 3 towards one unit you'd like to draw. You could put 3 towards another unit. You could only purchase one ticket and put it in for a unit, or you could purchase all 6, put them all towards the same unit in an attempt to try to increase your odds. So we just put all 6 in that bucket, just trying to get a tag, and it worked out.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, yeah, and I didn't really, fast forward 2 years, right now, 2 more draw cycles have gone by. I didn't realize how lucky we were.
Have you
Now
been
you
dumping
know.
6 opportunities in the
Yes,
same hunt for the
yes.
last couple of years?
Well, we decided to go for a unit that's a little harder to draw, and you
Okay.
might know what I'm talking about. There might be a clothing line named after it, and and we just have not been able to get it, unfortunately. Uh, but I think my plan next year is maybe revert back to the other one because like the hunt was great. The experience was great. The amount of bears we saw on our particular hunt, acceptable and not what I was expecting. And I think the other hunt has more of what I was expecting for like your interactions with bears.
Hmm.
And not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a different experience, you know.
Yeah. And then,
Um,
so like another very basic question I want to make sure I don't forget to ask you, don't forget to mention this hunt you did, the one you drew.
mhm.
Is this a bear tag or is this multiple bear tags?
No, one bear tag. That's it's they have a handful of units. One of which is like Prince of Wales Island. All those, not all, a lot of the Southeast Alaska units are. It's over the counter for residents. It's it's over the counter for residents. It's non-residents can have a guide and just book it, or unguided non-residents have to actually go into a draw. And that's what we were doing for a
Gotcha.
single tag. Yep. Yep. Kind of weird how they do it. And given kind of it's essentially like over the counter for non-residents, and also if you want to be or for residents and non-residents guided, you kind of expect more pressure. I mean, you know, in the lower 48, man, you can't go to any trailhead. There is no
Mhm.
secrets. And so it is different up there, just expecting more pressure. And then you go somewhere, especially I would assume spring bear hunting, maybe a little different. If you get into moose hunting season, I can imagine it may be similar. But there's nobody there. And I think that's part of the reason I fell in love with the spring bear portion of it is when I went to Idaho for my first spring bear experience with my daughter, dude, I mean, we had a whole mountain range to ourselves. I didn't see another person for like 5 straight days. It was incredible. It is an experience I've never had in the woods with a rifle.
Mm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So the draw results come out. You guys draw those draw. So also just some
Mm,
basic information.
yeah.
December is when the draw deadline is, or the entry
Yep.
deadline is for Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, it's February. Draw
Mm-hmm.
results come out.
Yep.
You guys drew this opportunity. Well, shoot.
And there's
First time in
weird
Alaska, now
dates.
what, right?
That's correct. You got it. You got it. And there's weird dates around it too, right? Because we wanted to go in the spring. And the
Hmm.
way Alaska works, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is the dates are really like the next fall through the following spring. So you're still actually like 16 months away
Yeah, that's a
from
good
when you're
point.
going to hunt.
Yeah,
And
so
it,
their spring hunt, like that, this comes into play with bears. It comes into play with like, which is more obscure, but some of the bison hunts, for example,
oh,
it is
yes. Yep.
confusing because results come out February
Hmm.
for a spring hunt that is not, 2 to 4 months later, but 14 to 6 months later. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and so everything seems you're so excited for this hunt, but it's so daggone far away. And then everything, like you said, you draw the tag and you go, uh, oh man, we drew it. Oh no, what next? And so, you know, we started looking to float plane pilots to get us where we wanted to be and where exactly we'd like to hunt in the unit that we drew, the equipment we're going to need, right? This is different than anything we've done. Everything we've ever done to this point is you're walking in and you're in 2 feet from the truck that you drove in. Um, and so it was a lot of making phone calls, a lot of scouring the internet for any similar hunts and kind of what they did, what they would suggest. It was me talking to people I know that have spent time in Alaska. I have one of my buddies. You'll love this. One of my buddies that was in my platoon in the army. He lives in Wasilla, I believe it is, or Palmer
Hmm.
now. But he works as a mechanic for Alaska Airlines. And so I sent him a message on Facebook and said, "Hey, I drew this tag in this place down in Southeast Alaska. Like, have you ever hunted down there?" And he said, "No, I've never hunted down there, but I've been down there quite a bit, you know, doing mechanical stuff on planes and all that." And I said, "Yeah, what are your suggestions?" And he said, "My suggestions to you are buy a rifle that's weatherproof and the best water or rain gear you can afford." And I said, okay, I will take that serious. And so I have a few rifles that I like, none of which are like really weatherproof. And so one of the things I did as part of preparation for this hunt was, what new rifle would I like that kind of works better for elk if I ever want to go on a moose hunt, which I do, for moose, for black bear, for whatever larger game. And I landed on a 300 Win short mag,
Hmm.
and I ended up getting. I'm left-handed, which man, that aren't you left-handed too?
I am for
Yes,
rifles. Yes. Yeah.
for rifle, yeah. So the looking at all kind of the options of, like, I settle on the ballistics of the 300 Wisdom, and then it's like, okay, well, what model? Man, right when you put that left-handed bolt action in there, everything like disappears, And so what I really wanted was a Tika. Their actions are so smooth, but they don't thread their barrels, and I really wanted the ability to put a brake on there or a suppressor or both, and ended up going with a Savage 110 Ultralight because of its carbon barrel and its weight. And there's a trade-off there, right, with the recoil because it's so light and all that. Um, and ended up getting a brake, and then from the brake, I ended up getting a Silencer Co suppressor. For people who have issues with recoil, I cannot praise suppressors enough and brakes. Just do it. Like it makes things so much easier. A 300 Win short mag, that thing is really kicking out some. I mean, it's basically equivalent to a 300 Win mag. You put a suppressor on that thing and a brake or a brake, it's like shooting a I don't know, it's like shooting a 243 almost. It's wild how much more accurate and confident you're going to get just by reducing the recoil and building some more confidence in it. And I know you guys preach that a lot. Like, forget caliber,
Hmm.
worry about the thing that you shoot the best.
Yeah.
And that, reducing that recoil and getting more of that confidence is going to help you shoot better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I'm not married to the 300 Win short mag. I actually have a 6.5 Creedmoor I love. Um, I don't take that mostly because it's right-handed, and follow-up shots, as you're well aware of, are a royal pain when you have to take your head off the scope in order to put the next shell in because it's right-handed. So that was one of the upgrades I made. Then we got the packs, the alpaca packs, uh, and we
The
fiddle
pack
around with those.
rafts.
Yeah, you got it. Yep, the
Yeah.
pack
Okay.
rafts. Yep.
Yep.
Fiddle around with those. One of the things, a suggestion after listening to a bunch of reviews, seemed to be um, the tubes that you can get with them. Super helpful until they start getting clogged with sand. And the places you want to be with that raft more than likely are going to be places that are clogging the zippers up with sand. And so I actually opted not to get the tubes,
Mm.
and it worked out okay. If I go on a moose hunt with it, ooh, that's going to be rough. I'm going to be sitting on top of meat, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, but uh, Reed, who went with me, he did not. He opted to have the tubes, and it did work really well. It's definitely worth its weight. I was just hoping to maybe get some more longevity out of mine by not having the zipper.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think they're a huge advantage in a hunting use case, but they do require attention and maintenance just to keep that
Yes.
zipper operational for sure.
Yep. Yep. And I'm terrible with that kind of thing. Normally, I'm the guy who comes back from a 10-day hunt, and I just throw everything in the corner for a few weeks, and you know that's a testament to your guys your K3 pack that I have.
Oh,
Man, have
cool.
I beat that thing up.
Nice.
I can't tell you how much blood is on it and dirt, and normally all I do is I pull everything out of it and I just shake it out, and then it goes in the corner for the next hunt.
Yeah, cool. Well, definitely get yeah, at least at a minimum, get that trash and stuff out of there. And I'm saying that because one of the most common quote unquote warranty things we get
Hmm.
is guys will bring a pack home, throw it in the corner, especially like in the garage, but it could
Yep.
be in the house. And then a critter, a rodent, a dog,
Yes. Yep.
something gets to it and chews on it, either because of the blood or because sometimes it's actual food, sometimes it's just wrappers left in the pack.
Yeah,
And so we
yep,
do
that makes
more
sense.
repair work because of things like that than any other thing or every other thing really
Oh,
combined
that's
for
rough.
sure.
That's rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never not, I've never had that issue yet, and I am pretty diligent about at least getting all of the stuff out. I will say to take another rabbit trail, the when I was looking for a pack for that Colorado hunt I did, I went through three or four different companies and very popular companies that a lot of people promote. And we have a ski hill here in town, so it's an easy, walk for me to really get some. It's no Idaho mountains or anything like that, but it's a nice, easy way for me to get a lot of hiking in and a lot of elevation and a lot of that stability type stuff you need when you got 60 pounds on your back. And your guys' pack, hands down, by far, not even close. It was not even a decision, against these other packs. Not even a decision. The distribution and weight, how it sat on my hips versus other packs, especially when this is what people don't talk about, especially when you are sopping wet and sweat. That pack changes where it sits on your hips depending on which pack it is.
Hmm.
And your guys actually stayed in place versus starting to slide down when you hit a certain threshold in weight or you're getting too sweaty and stuff like that. And it makes all the difference.
That's good to hear. Your
Oh
check's
yeah.
in the mail for saying that on the
Yeah.
podcast.
No, they're worth it. I get it's a spendy item and a
Yeah.
quality item. What I've found, right? What I've found is it is true. I get everybody likes to hate on Sitka and all that stuff for the prices they charge, and I get it. I totally understand, especially for like it's only a few months out of the year you're really utilizing the stuff and all that. All these more solid colors, they make it so you can extend the season of those things you're paying for too, which is
Yeah.
nice. Um, but there is a correlation between quality and price. There really is. And it's hard to swallow, but that's a lot of truth.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure you guys like think you make everything in the US, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And you do, that's what's frustrating is this idea of you get what you pay for is mostly true, except when it's not. That's what is like extra
Yeah.
sour, right?
Yes. Well, it's
Um,
tough. I make oh, man, another rabbit trail. Sorry, you're gonna have to do a lot of editing.
no, it's good.
I make maple syrup as like a hobby in the spring, which I'm maybe a week or two away from tapping here. And what I've found over the years, doing it is the maple syrup that you make, there's a vast difference in the quality. You can call something, which and it's not a lie. You can go to Walmart and you can buy whatever, Walmart's version or whatever version is in Walmart, 100% maple syrup, right? And that's true. It is 100% maple syrup. But what they don't tell you is they get it from these huge distributors who take maple syrup from 100 different farms and for consistency's sake dump all of it together to get the same grade
Oh,
product.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So you lose all
Where
the like distinctiveness and everything else.
nailed it,
Yeah.
nailed it. And so I don't do that. I actually, as the quality of the syrup, it's not quality, as the grade of the syrup changes through the season, I bottle it that way because each type of grade that the golden, the really light stuff, the amber, which is the middle of the road, more common stuff, and then the dark, they all have their own wonderful attributes. They're all delicious in their own way. Why would I rob a consumer of that?
Mm.
And so, but same parallel is yeah, like you said, that they might be the same thing, but the quality is wildly different, and it's hard to communicate that to people.
How did you jump back to this Alaska hunt? And I enjoy those rabbit trails, by the way. When you guys, so you drew a specific unit, right? So you're not
Yep.
looking at, hey, we
No.
want to go bear hunt in Alaska and we have
Right.
everything available to us, or even bear hunt in Idaho. Like there's so much country you could go hunt over the
Mm-hmm.
counter as a non-resident for bears in
Yep.
Idaho. You guys obviously had things like this is our unit. We drew this tag.
Yeah.
That said, was it difficult to narrow down and focus that or not so
It
much? Like on
not
where do you want to hunt within
really.
that unit?
It wasn't It wasn't easy, but you can narrow down kind of like elk if or whatever it is you're looking for, like a particular elevation band or something like that. With the bear thing, like in Idaho, for instance, like um, I will call the whatever the closest ranger station is and say, hey, where's the snow melt right now on those south slopes? And they'll give you like a general idea. And I know those bears are going to be what, 700 feet below that, kind of where you would expect the grass to be greening up on those south slopes. When they tell me the elevation band I'm looking for, given the habitat or the things I'm looking for, like those pastures and stuff like that, those green fields, dude, I hit the ground running. Like that is go time. When they tell me where the snow is, and then that kind of lines up 500 feet below that in that elevation band of the habitat I'm looking for, I'm gone. Luckily, I have a job I can do that pretty quickly. And so,
Hmm.
same situation here. How do I narrow down where do we want to hunt? Well, what do we know about spring bear? They're all clogged up from their hibernation, right? So they're doing a lot of eating fibrous stuff, grass. Sometimes they're looking for like shellfish or something like that, mussels and stuff like that on the beach. Okay. Once the salmon come in like June, they're going after those, but I don't want that bear. I don't want to be around um, during mating season and during when the salmon are around, because like I would like to eat the bear, and I also don't want that much vegetation having been sprouted. So I want to go early in the season when I think those edges in bays and along rivers and stuff like that are going to be green. And so we went back a few years and looked at some different data and kind of got a general idea of like like when is the median that's happening in the place we're going. And it just so happened to line up about Labor or not Labor Day, Memorial Day. And so I was like, okay, well, I already have like 2 free days off work there.
Yeah.
So we're gonna send it for that time. And then the other thing was make it a long trip. How many times am I going to get to go to Alaska? I don't know. I'm guessing it's not going to be too many, right? So why would I rob myself of the time there for a day or two? That's silly. And I got some really good advice from a family friend who he had been elk hunting out west for 25, 30 years. And he told me early on, he said, I'll give you a tip that took me years to learn. And that is no matter what big game hunt you're on, it's going to take you 3 to 5 days to get situated, learn the place you're hunting, and attempt to find where what the animals are doing and where they are.
Yeah.
If you have a week trip, that's the time you're leaving.
Hmm.
So give yourself no less than 10 days of hunting, even up to 14 days. So then after that 5 days of understanding where you are and what you're doing, you have another 3 to 5 days to actually put an animal on the ground.
Yeah.
And I've taken that very seriously. And I've done that the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, I've filled tags on my elk because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a
Um,
huge, I mean, at the end of the day, what is the number one thing you can do to be more successful? Spend
be
more
out
time in the
there.
field,
That's
period.
it.
Like,
Yeah. And you don't have an advantage. Like you do, and you don't have an advantage as somebody who doesn't live in the place you're hunting, because so often you hear like these stories of I can go up there in the spring if I live in, for instance, let's say Idaho. I can go up there in the spring and I can go up there in the summer. I can kind of see where the elk are. If you've been doing that for decades and you completely understand like their whole life cycle in the mountains, that's one thing. But if you're somebody who only elk hunts during the season and you still live in Idaho and you go up there once in the summer, well, that data is useless to you in the fall, right? Like they're somewhere else doing something else. And so that level the playing field is somebody who doesn't live in the area by spending more time out there when you have the opportunity.
yeah.
And at the time that it actually means something, at the time when they are moving around from hunting pressure, or they are moving because of snow, like be there during the times that you want to be hunting them
Mhm.
and for as long as possible, even if it comes with some sacrifice,
Yeah.
because getting up to Alaska and back, that's its own thing too.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to actually touch on next. I know we could dive so much deeper into any of these topics, but you got a tag.
Yes.
You've been doing research.
Yep.
You've started to narrow down your area. You've
Yep.
started to narrow down your timing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, essentially, let's just do it this way. What did it take? Walk me through what it looked like to get from your front door
Okay.
to a bear. And
Okay.
by that, I
Yes.
just mean the travel logistics.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So we get the tag. We did our e-scouting and we talked to the pilot. We talked to um, the game and fish people in the area. Kind of got a feel for once we understood where we wanted to go, or at least a few options, get their feedback, the wildlife biologists, all them, get their feedback on what they might think or what they've been seeing. Then once we had a pinpoint, okay, we're going here. We set up the float plane arrangements with the pilot, which was actually way easier than I thought. And I know your guys' podcast on kind of talking through all of that stuff with this experience project, really helpful. And everything you said is true. Like these people, they're just running a business, right? Like they're very open to talking to you and telling you, when they're open, when they're not. If it's like midsummer through the fall, yeah, they're not available. They're on a plane somewhere doing something, for their job. But outside of that, they're fairly available and they're willing to talk to you. It's not like they're not just going to give you one word answers. So we set up the dates and the times with him, which felt really uneasy because it's something that's so far away and so important to you. Yet they're just like, yeah, I'll be here. Yeah.
Yep.
Like they don't tell you much because they're professionals, it's their job, but there's so much riding on it for you. You kind of get this uneasy feeling if you're like somebody who likes to plan.
Yeah.
But you just trust them. It all worked out. So yeah, we packed our stuff up. Each of us had um, each of us had a cooler, and I shoved my K3 bag in the cooler with the raft and maybe the paddles and some other stuff. And then I also have the Stone Glacier, like the waterproof travel bag.
Just like a duffel.
Yeah, like a duffel. Yeah,
Okay.
like a
So when you say
medium.
cooler, you're like full size, hard sided cooler. You're putting the pack and
Yes.
pack raft
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
pretty
I
big.
was worried about weight, and so I ended up going with I think it's a Coleman. But it's I want to say boy, 160 quarts or something like that. It was big enough that I thought I could get a bear in it. I
Mm.
think it was like 160 quarts, had wheels. So shove my pack in there on the way out, on the way back, assuming I get a bear. Meat's in there, packs on my back.
And that's just a checked
Um,
item you're flying with commercially.
you got it. And
Yeah.
then the rifle case. Yep.
Okay.
I took a rifle, he took a bow. He's real big into archery hunting, and I said, well, you always have my rifle in case we can't close the deal.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yep, we drove down to Minneapolis. That's the closest kind of major airport. So it's a 6 hour drive. Uh, Park the car, get to the airport, check everything in. I've had, and I'm sure a lot of people can tell you, a variety of stories. Almost every time I go to the airport, I get a different story about rifles. But I had some different locks and stuff with me just in case, and I didn't have to utilize anything. Luckily, there was no issues. So we boarded the plane, flew to Seattle, Seattle to Juneau, Juneau to Petersburg, and then from there we flew out. Um, when we were initially looking at this trip, as far as logistics go, to your point about the logistics of getting up there, it looked pretty easy. Like, okay, yeah, there'll be some time waiting around and layovers and all that stuff, but it's okay. And then you go from like the general like idea of the logistics to get there to we actually have to make a plan and book tickets to get there. Those are two very different things. Um, but somehow Reed found a way to just thread the needle, and we got from Minneapolis to Juneau, no, to Petersburg, and then into the field the same day.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's yeah,
yeah.
that's an
We had,
efficient travel
yeah,
plan
I
there.
could not believe it. Yeah. Normally, like when you look at coming from like the Midwest up to there, you're looking at least a day of travel. he somehow threaded the needle, or it just worked out the right way, and he found that flight where it was only like an hour and a half layover in Seattle, and then I don't even think we didn't even get off the plane. No, we just went from one plane to another in Juneau. Um, and so there was like no layover there. And then when we get to Petersburg, our pilot, his hangar is right next to the the facility, you get out the
Yeah, the
airport.
commercial terminal.
And so you legit just walk off the tarmac over to his plane. And it
Wow.
was, I couldn't tell you how efficient that I was so pleasantly surprised how well it all worked, how smooth it all went, knowing all of the horror stories you hear about not being able to get out for a day or two, and all of that.
So you fly in commercial to Petersburg.
Hmm.
You get on some sort of charter or air
Hmm.
service
Yep.
transporter
Yep.
to what? To a base camp that you're setting, to some sort of facility that you've established. Like, I genuinely don't know how you did this hunt in terms of what are you living out of, essentially?
Sure.
Like, what are you accessing when you land with your air service?
Yep. So, given the tide swings and all of that, right? We told him where we wanted to go, and he said, "Okay." So we went there, and here's another tip for people who haven't done this before. Feel free to kind of like give him some insight in like what you're trying to do, because like they're trying to serve their customer too, right? So he did us such a solid, which I never would have thought of, given never having been on a float plane or a private charter kind of thing. And we told him where we wanted to hunt. Okay. And so we get there, and he said, "All right, I'm just going to do a huge loop like around this area you want to hunt, just so you can see what it looks like from the air," which was so helpful, man, to
Hmm.
see it, to actually see it with your eyes from the air and kind of understand all the like intricacies and what the terrain really is just from a few hundred feet up was so helpful for that hunt. Even spotted a bear, no, two bears on our way in, which was cool. Like, obviously, you can't hunt them the same day, but it's super fulfilling or
Hmm.
comforting to know, like, oh, they are here, and I think we made the right decision. That's a
Yeah.
nice way to walk into a hunt.
This may be a dumb question. What was helpful about that flyover? Meaning, was it, because my head goes in two different directions. One is just some level of like confidence because of familiarity of at
Mm-hmm.
least like, oh, hey, I've seen this before. It was from the air. I'm not landing blind. I feel like, yeah, I've seen what we're going to be hunting. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of like a personal confidence comfort thing.
Yep. Yep.
The
For
other
sure.
would be more strategic on either seeing animals or seeing the terrain and then understanding maybe how to move through the terrain, that type of
Yes.
thing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and that's exactly how I took it. And another factor too that you might not think of being from not well, being from not the either West Coast or anywhere else. The tides. What does this thing look like currently with the tides that are there right now? Because that could look wildly different than from when the tide rolls in. And that, oh my goodness, them tides up there are something else. I duck hunting on the Chesapeake Bay and stuff like that. I'm used to tides, a foot and a half swing maybe, and that's not the same thing. That's not the same
Yeah.
thing at all. And so, yeah, it had a lot of value, like understanding. Okay, the tide was out at the time, or going out at the time. Well, some of the places like I heavily use Go Hunt, love Go Hunt, love everything about them. I think they have fantastic tools. I think Onyx has good tools. Basemap has good tools. I just prefer Go Hunt. Um, and on Go Hunt, depending, they have a feature now where you can go back through historical images. That is critical for these hunts on tides. You can occasionally, very often, they have different historical photos that will show you where the tide is when it's high and where the tide is when it's low. And to be able to see like how much the water moves, oh man, it's really informative for your hunt, because there's a lot of places um, you just can't get to, or if you're getting to, which will come later in the story, it requires more effort than you might have thought.
Hmm. So in terms of tides and how much they swing,
Mm-hmm.
how are you planning to track that? Meaning, were you relying on a device? Because like my watch will tell me tide charts. There's
Oh,
different,
interesting.
apps that can have tides. Or did you go into this with like a intention of, hey, here are dates, here are the tide times and cycles? Like, was
Yep,
that more printed or data you pulled ahead of time?
it
How-
was.
Okay.
Yes, it was, and that was at the. I was aware that the tides are crazy up there. The float plane pilot, he told me, he said, you're going to want to know those. And so we went to, um, we Googled what the tides were in the closest place that they were recording them, and we screenshotted them on our phone. So we
Okay.
had what it was for the dates we were going to be there. Yeah.
Got it. Cool.
Now,
Oh,
what
so,
I didn't expect was when we landed, because of the tides in that bay that we wanted to hunt, we landed on an island and we had to inflate our rafts and paddle across. Well, initially from the air, you go, okay, we just paddle way, way back in this bay and cool. Well, when the tide came out, that was a massive tidal flat. And so we had to pick up our raft, pick all our gear up, which included those duffel bags, right, for the additional stuff that we wanted to bring. And
mhm.
we had to hike all that stuff in like 2.5 miles across this tide flat in waders,
Yeah. Dang. What
which was not what I expected.
landing on the island, was it in a landing strip? Was it just
Nope,
gravel
water.
bar?
No, no. So he had float pods, and so
Oh, okay. It was still float.
yeah, he landed on an island that had just a real quick drop off on the side, so he knew even with the tide swings, it was fine to
Got it.
put
Okay.
the plane there. Yep.
Yeah, I pictured float, but then when you said landed on an island, I was like, wait, was he trying to get on ground?
Oh yeah, no, no, yeah.
Yeah.
He just kind of motored up to it, and we just dumped everything out. And
Oh, okay. Got it.
yeah, yep,
Man, shuttling all that gear,
yep,
tide flat, 2.5
yeah.
miles, in waders. That sounds pretty miserable.
It was
And
pretty
then
terrible.
you get across it and you still gotta like set up your home, for the rest of this
Yeah,
trip, right?
yep, yep, yep. So we got to where we wanted to set up base camp. Yeah, and got everything there, got everything settled in, and essentially we had a little bit of time before the sun went down, which in the spring in Alaska, something else I didn't really think about is it never actually really gets dark that time of year. Um, and so we're back in this bay. We were doing some glassing just for kicks since we kind of were ahead of schedule, even even with the hike in, and picked up the bear that we saw from the air. And okay, cool. Like we know there's one not too far away. That's something we'll put in our back pocket. And so we went to sleep that night, kind of anticipating the next day because there's a lot of, we wanted to really put our feet on the ground in all of these little coves and all these streams coming in and all that. And knowing that there's a barren area. So that was really, really confidence building
Yeah.
going into this. You know, what they don't tell you though with the spring migration, you're going to listen to geese 24 hours a day.
Oh, really?
Oh my goodness. Them geese were honking and landing and coming and going, and speckle bellies too, 24/7. And because it never actually gets dark up there, they never actually sleep. They just keep honking.
Wow.
It's wild.
Between the noise and the light, did you do anything or finding yourself wishing you would have done something to get sleep in terms of eye cover, ear plugs,
Good
sleep
question.
medication, anything of the sort?
A good question. I actually, on all my backcountry hunts, I actually bring Tylenol PM to take. And I don't
Hmm.
remember where I got that tip from. I got that tip from somewhere.
Maybe
But
yes.
Tylenol,
I'm not trying to
it,
take credit, but we have talked
no,
about it.
that might have been it then. That might have been it because two reasons, and it might have been the two reasons that you said. One, as a sleep aid, and two, as an anti-inflammatory after beating my body up all day. And
Yep.
that has been a key. That goes in every hunt with me,
Yeah.
and that helps a lot.
Yeah,
I
it's
also,
that
I
stuff's
yeah.
impressive. And because I
Oh
don't
yeah.
take it regularly,
Yep.
um, I mean it's very effective, at least for me, because I know obviously you can build tolerance to it, but
Hmm.
if I only use it in the backcountry, and even then I don't even take it on every trip of every night, but when I do
Yep.
take it, oh man, it's super
Oh yeah.
helpful.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it works really well. Yeah.
What did it hit pause and just was there a moment on the trip of just getting there that it was like, oh, we're here. We did this. Like, maybe once camp was set up or something like that. Did you just, or maybe it
I
was before, just during the
yeah,
travels, but
yeah.
like for me, especially with, I mean, yes, Alaska, but we could take it outside of Alaska and just anything that is new to you, and especially when it's something you've planned for, saved for, dreamt about for
Mm-hmm.
months.
Mm-hmm.
When that becomes reality, there's just these cool moments of like,
Yes.
okay, this is real.
Yep. And that happened at different levels, for sure. Um, the first one, I'm one of those people who I don't know how you are, but I'm one of those people who like I will actually rush past a lot of those like milestones and not stop and just appreciate it in the
Hmm.
moment. Like, you shoot an elk and it's like, well, I know the next thing I have to do is quarter this thing up. And so I just move to that instead of just stopping for a second and going, we did it.
Hmm.
Which I'm trying to get better about. But I would say that moment really happened when we got to the float plane pilot because all of our gear had actually made it. Like my first biggest concern was, is our gear going to get there?
Hmm.
And then when you finally see it all sitting there in front of that float plane, you're like, hey, this is actually happening. And then to your point, you get to the field, you hike in, you set up camp, and then you go, this is it. We're here. This is really happening, you know?
That's a great point too, just on when you kill the animal. Because I'm usually the same way. I'm always like, again, this is a personality thing. I'm always thinking about what's next,
Yep.
what's ahead, what
Mm-hmm.
needs to be done. I'm a planner, I'm a thinker.
Yep.
And for sure that robs me out of moments because my head's not where my feet are. Um,
Yes, exactly.
and
I
yeah, I
like
mean
that.
that's one thing I've learned to, and I say I've learned, I didn't do it by choice. I did it because I've been with other people on hunts where I'm like you. It's like, okay, we killed the animal, recovered the animal, a few quick photos. Now let's get the knives out.
Exactly.
And now my
Yep.
pattern is, there's situations where you're in a rush, of course. Like
Yeah.
the last elk I
Sun's coming
killed, it
down.
was yeah, exactly. The last elk I
Yep.
killed, we had very little daylight. We had no water. We had, no place to sleep. Like
Yeah.
there's situations
Yep.
compared to like my one of the first biggest times I did this in any real way was my sheep hunt where
Mm,
obviously I had to be guided, but Mark, my guide who I was with, when we recovered it, it was like we sat there for an hour and just took it in.
just took it in. Yep.
I mean, just like the scene, the setting, the animal, the
That's it.
moment, have a snack, make coffee,
Hmm.
just take it in. And that
Yeah.
was like, it helped me sear in that hunt as a whole. Like stopping in
Yes.
those moments and slowing down
Yep.
helped me realize what that hunt was and what it meant. And I don't say that just because it was a sheep hunt in Alaska.
Yeah.
I do that. I try to do that every time now on every hunt is
Hmm.
stop, slow down, take it in.
That's it. Me too. Yep. This was the first hunt I really, really did that with.
Yeah.
Just knowing how many opportunities you're going to get to come to Alaska. No matter what animal you're hunting, how many times am I going to be back here? I can probably, I mean, if I am lucky, really, really lucky, I might be able to put it on two hands. Really, really lucky. More than likely, maybe one hand.
Hmm.
And you don't get very many opportunities to stop and just take it in.
All right. Well, that was a lot to just get there, which is Alaska, but you guys are here. You've made it, and
Yep.
it's like time to actually get hunting. So, of course, with Alaska, I think you mentioned this as well. Like, you can't hunt the day you fly, but
Right.
obviously, you guys had seen the bear. You got some high
Hmm.
hopes. Was it full on anxious to wake up and just get going at this moment?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. It's hard to sleep, right? Like
Yeah.
you know the thing you're chasing is out there. You saw it.
Hmm.
So that day zero, after we got camp set up and settled in and everything, and kind of made a plan for the next day. Uh, Day one, the first thing we wanted to do, and I do this with every hunt, is just cover ground. Yes, we know kind of where that bear is, and I'm willing to spend a little time seeing if he's still there or not. But there's a lot to learn. Seeing it from the air and putting boots on the ground are two very different things. Um, so we started hiking and glassing deeper and deeper into the area that we got dropped off in. And essentially, our method for this was um, walk as far back as we could into the open areas we can kind of see in, and then work our way forward all the way back to the ocean, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then as we're doing that, find water, um, and see what the tides are like, because this will be the first full day we get to experience what the tides are like,
Right.
which is such a huge thing.
Did that ever become an issue where it limited how much you could hunt, or like, because obviously you have
Yes.
daylight, of course, which Alaska is unique with daylight. You
Yes,
have
it
a lot of
is.
daylight
Oh, yeah.
uh, at this time of year, but then in terms of just access and logistics, like, okay, we could leave, but then getting back, did you find it limiting?
We didn't find it limiting. No,
Okay.
no, because we kind of planned around it. But given we were hunting like a large bay, it did kind of cut everything in half, right? So
Right.
if you wanted to hunt one side of the bay, I mean, we could glass to the other side of the bay, but depending on the tide, you better have brought your rafts with you. And
Yep.
that plays later into the hunt. That really saved our butts.
Yeah.
So we were getting eyes on different parts of the bay, different angles, like kind of looking across plains and pastures, like open areas in the bay, and kind of cutting back into like where the shade was, those little fringe areas. And we saw a lot of deer, actually, a lot of black-tailed deer. Saw quite a few moose. No bears, unfortunately, but we knew they were in the area. You know.
Yeah.
So it kept, to me, like it kept their spirits up. We knew that something's in the area. We have plenty of time, right? We budgeted like 10 days in the field. Just just chill out, relax. It's gonna happen.
Hmm.
And so that was most of day one, is just getting eyes on everything, like having time to walk around and having time to like look at, like, one of the things I think that you don't really think about, especially from satellite imagery, is with the tides being so dramatic, um, finding waters are actually kind of an issue. Yes,
Mm.
there's creeks everywhere. When the tide comes in, those creeks are salt water. So I don't. Do you really want to be drinking that water? If I see kelp sitting there in the stream, no, probably not. I'm going to keep going upstream.
Yeah.
And so there's so much water everywhere and fresh water, but how far back do you have to go to actually get to like good fresh water?
Right.
Which was also, that was not a logistical challenge. Like, we knew where we could go and we could get it, but it's further than you think. Like, you're staring at water here, but you still got to walk half a mile to actually get to what the water you want to collect,
Hmm.
which takes time. People who haven't done a backcountry hunt, I don't think they realize, like, you always see the highlight reels.
Yeah.
They don't recognize that a fair portion of every day is just getting water.
Yeah. Water is life, man. And sometimes
Water
it's
is
super
life.
easy, and sometimes it
Yep.
just dictates where you can go and what you can do.
Yep. And we got lucky. We did get lucky, I'll say, with the weather for the whole trip. Went into it, with my buddy's recommendation of get the best weather gear you can get. It did, I would say it rained, boy, I think we were out there 4.5, 5 days, 5.5 days. It rained 3 of those days, but it was not like a torrential downpour. It was just like a heavy mist or a really light shower, nothing that you couldn't hunt in.
Hmm.
Um, and that did have an impact. But all the snow, like we did time it well. All the snow and all that was gone. Um, and so we weren't really fighting cold. So as far as the weather went, it was really good timing on our part. Um, Trying to time grass being green, snow being at least gone enough that the grass is greening up and all that. And then so day two, um, we're actually we started the day glassing from camp because we put ourselves in a position right on the edge of a tree line where we can get a lot. We can cover. Oh boy, I would bet over a mile and a half of wood line from where our camp was with our glass. Um, we took a little break to go. We made breakfast, took a break, walked up the creek, got some more water. We're coming back, and my buddy, he looks up and goes, oh, "I think there's something black there." Puts his binoculars up and goes, "The bear, the bear's there right now." And so we're like, "Oh shoot!" Like now we're in a scurry. So we get back to camp, put the water down. It didn't look like the bear's in any big rush. It's just out there eating grass, not far from the wood line, from what we could tell. Um, and we just took a second to kind of take it in and identify like where's the wind coming from, how far away is this thing, like what can't we see from where we are, right? Like if you pull up Go Hunt or Onyx Maps or whatever, you'll see that he's actually came out of the wood line and he's in this grassy area, but it's kind of an island. It kind of wraps around this little island of trees, and from your vantage point, it just looks like he's in an open area, but you can't see the depth of like how the trees and everything are kind of may impact your approach.
Mm-hmm.
And so we came up with a plan. Given the wind direction, we jumped down into one of the tidal creeks, essentially where the water comes in, and we just hoofed it all the way up to get. And with also being strategic, that the wind was not necessarily in our favor from camp, but I've hunted enough to know that getting down and into an area where there's a creek is going to also adjust kind of the wind flow.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. It worked perfectly. We ended up being able to get past to where the wind direction was in our favor, up above the bear, and closer because there's so many kind of channels. So you kind of take the one closest to him, kind of make your move in that direction. Um, and we look up over the bank, and sure enough, he's still there. He's, I don't know, this is probably a mile and a half, I would guess, movement from our camp over to this bear and up these creek beds. Um, we look up, peek over. Yep, sure enough, he's still there, but we're still, oh goodness, 600 yards away probably. So we're slowly making our way as low as we can, and a lot of that grassy area is knee high, about maybe even hip high in some areas. Um, Made our way up past the tree line, the point that he was eating behind, so that then, given the wind, we could kind of just make our approach straight to the tree line, unseen, unheard, unsmelled, um, and then make the next step to our plan once we got closer and got a better idea what the terrain was there and what we could possibly do. Now, given um, he spotted the bear, and he's got archery equipment. Um, I told him, I said, "Hey, you spotted it? That's your bear, man." So he goes to make a move, gets up to the corner. I'm probably 50 yards, 40 yards behind him. He gets to the corner of the trees, and he looks around the corner of the trees, and again we've been kind of not eyes on for a little while now. And he looks behind, looks back at me with big eyes, and goes, there's two bears." And I was like, "What?" And so I kind of like, inch over a little bit on my knees and look around the side of the trees. Sure enough, there's a big old bear and a nice bear next to him. They're both eating in the grass there. And so I kind of walk up to him and we're talking it through. And for the life of us, we cannot come up with a good approach because these bears are, oh boy, maybe 180 yards or so from where we were on the point, but a solid 60, 70 yards from the tree line. And unfortunately, our wind, even if we could get through the forest quietly, which is like impossible, the wind was not in our favor. It was blowing right towards them from that tree line. And so we kind of talked about, should we wait them out? Should we kind of just see what they do? And as we were having that discussion, they took off into the woods. And
Like took off spooked at all?
well, good question. I mean, I'm a okay deer hunter. He's an excellent deer hunter. I mean, he is, I mean, both of us, hunting elk and all that, like we're wildly aware of wind direction and scent and all of that. And my interactions with the bear up to this point, I've I've seen how they respond to smell. And it didn't quite seem like that. Like we were wrapping our minds around it because it was a solid 10, like a consistent 10 to 12 mile an hour wind, right? Like it was not a wind where you're going to go, how did they smell us from 200 yards away with this crosswind? There's just no
Hmm.
way. So we were like, well, that's really unfortunate. Not sure how they picked us up, but oh well. So we start walking back to camp. We get about 400 yards away and turn around. The big bear came back out. Our best guess is that big bear was chasing off that smaller bear. And we just happened to be there when it happened.
Mm.
Just total coincidental. And so this bear's back out in the middle, maybe 100 yards from the wood line. But as it would have it at this point, as we're walking towards camp, now we're downwind. And so, oh man, we still have an approach to this bear. We are in the open. So we don't have that work in our favor, but bears are, I mean, darn near blind, right? So as long as they can't smell you with their nose, you're fairly good. Um, and so we had another discussion about, all right, what's our approach here? And he said, well, given where it is and the situation with the wind and everything, he's like, let's just get on the board, right? Let's just punch a tag. So I said, okay, you spotted the bear. If you're willing to default to me because I have the rifle, cool. So we start stalking our way back, like low and slow, right, and making sure the wind's in our favor. I mean, every few yards, keeping the talcum powder out, the whole nine. We get to about 120 yards away from the bear, and he is completely oblivious. Just head down, eating grass. He's feeding. Funny enough, he's actually feeding like downwind, which was a
Mm.
little odd, not into the wind. I'm not sure why. Maybe the wind was swirling behind the trees. That could have very well been because it was kind of on a point. Um, and so we just sat there and I waited for a really good shot opportunity. Had all the time in the world to get set up. Um, didn't even need to correct the zero, right? I had my zero on my rifle, my 300 Win Mag or short mag at 100 yards, 120 yards. There's no difference there, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
aiming kind of center mass on the bear anyway, just a little forward. All I want to do is hit some lungs. Um, his finally, he just kept walking towards us. I think he closed the distance, maybe another 10 yards or so. Um, I felt good about the shot. I felt good about the position I was in. With the grass the way it was, I had to set my rifle on top of my exo pack in order to get a shot, which for a side thing, for those people, and I know you guys have talked about this, a lot of people have been talking about this. When you go to the range, if you have the freedom to shoot like you're hunting, do it. Shooting from a bench is not the same as sitting your butt on the ground and holding your rifle on the top of your pack. It ain't
Hmm.
nowhere close. Luckily, I had been doing that, like prepping for something that might happen like this. And it
So when
wasn't
you
an
say
issue.
you were shooting on top of the pack, you had the pack standing up?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
because the
Yeah,
grass
getting
is like
above the grass,
knee.
right?
You got it. Yeah. Yeah. Which, if you had the pack laying down and it's on top of the pack, even better because you're kind of in the prone position then.
Right.
But this way, you're on a knee or something like that, which is a little less stable. Given it's a close shot, not a big deal. So I let one rip, put it just forward of center. A great shot. It just whipped around and bit at it, and then just started wandering away. Um, and I thought, well, I've seen this before. Whatever I do, he cannot get in that wood line. Um, as thick as it is in there, it's a real pain to find them. And so that was the first thing I was thinking about is make sure that thing dies in the open. So as quick as I could get another one in him, and he gave a decent shot. I put another one in him, and he died right there. He probably didn't go more than 10 to 15 yards from the first shot.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, if people
Oh,
are
incredible.
new to bears, between their hides, between their fat, all that, like a lot of times bears just don't bleed well.
No.
There's
Oh
times
my
that they
goodness, no.
can for sure, but uh, almost, I don't want to say regardless of what type of bullet you use, but just, yeah, it's very common for to bears essentially plug up and not bleed well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I fully
Yeah.
agree, especially when, and then headed towards really thick stuff. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
good call to follow up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the whole the this kind of goes back to the like the caliber, the small caliber but better shots, right? Or bigger caliber, whatever it is. The whole
Hmm.
efficacy is make that thing die as fast as possible, and that's a benefit to you, and that's a benefit to the animal, right?
Hmm.
Um, and having walked through the forest, I mean, if people haven't been there, it is dark. It is really damp. There are little holes and cubbies everywhere. It would be so easy for that thing to go in there, no blood trail, and just
Hmm.
die in a little hole covered by some pine, and you would never find it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that bear hits the ground, and I am elated. It's one of those, like you said, you're like, it happened. It actually happened. But my first thought is like, also now we have to take care of this bear.
Yeah.
So I tried to be intentional again about like thinking about what's had like success, this we came all this way, had a year, 16 months of planning for this moment right here. So I just stopped for a second and got out my inReach and text my wife, bear down. And I think I text my brother too, bear down. We just sat there and just kind of enjoyed the moment for a few minutes just to make sure the bear was had expired. And then we walk over to it, and man, I looked at that bear, and I've seen plenty of bears in my time. Um, not certainly not as many as others, but enough to like generally have this feeling of like, black bear, whatever.
Hmm.
I walked up on that bear and I was like, oh, I should have more respect for black bears. This thing is huge. I remember getting down and putting my hands on its head, and I'm looking at its mouth, and I'm like, no, this isn't something to mess around with. Like this guy's taking an arm off if you get your arm in his mouth. I mean, he had a huge chomper. Holy cow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just took a second to sit there and just appreciate the moment. It was a beautiful day. The sun was, half out. It was like partly cloudy. It was probably mid 50s. I mean, just perfect weather, just sitting there in this open grass field in Alaska, tag punched with a bear that I didn't think much about the size of it at the time, but I knew it was a good bear for sure.
Hmm.
Um, and then we started getting to work. Um, I I before we left. I know Meat Eater. They did a year or two ago. They did a video on how to field dress a bear, but not so much like the quartering part. I'm very familiar with that.
Hmm.
The hide part, like
Yep.
how you want to make your cuts. And so I executed that to the best of my ability. And you got to keep the sex identification on the bear. So cut around that and did good there. And yeah, we packed that hide up, which is, oh man, 40 some pounds in itself.
Hmm.
Um, and quartered it out. Took as much meat as we could. And I believe the law for spring bear, at least when we hunted, was at least half the meat had to come out. I think that's the law. We brought out, oh my goodness, almost all of it, probably 90% of it. Um, I like bear, so why would I
Yeah.
leave it? So yeah, we get back to camp and we didn't salt the hide. And I don't think we brought salt. You know, I do a lot of trapping. I'm pretty familiar how to keep hides, you know, flesh them down and get them dry and all of that. So that's what I was working on, fleshing it down. We had the meat in caribou bags that we got hung up in trees so it could air out, and we just kind of celebrated the victory of, hey, we got two tags, one's down, and just just showered ourselves in the accomplishment, you know, coming from halfway, you know, from the middle of the lower 48 up to Alaska and having success, you know, sight
Yeah,
unseen.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So cool. It's a tank of a bear too, just based on the photo that I've seen. Obviously, it wasn't there, but yeah, as you said,
Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
bears are tricky. They're so tricky.
They really are.
There's bears that I've from a distance thought were really big, and then you get close, and then they're not. And then there's
Yep.
some that are you think aren't very big, and then you get close that they are. And when there's
Yeah.
no, especially when there's no context like or comparison, like a solo bear, man, they can be tough to judge unless you have a ton of
Yes.
experience.
Yes. And I normally judge them by essentially it's just how stubby their legs are compared to like their mid body.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, and then the other thing I've heard too is how prominent are their ears? If their ears are less and less prominent, then you're looking at potentially a bigger and bigger head. The
Hmm.
younger bears have pretty prominent ears,
Hmm.
just because they're not that big yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll return to that part of it. So that's the end of this is day two. Yeah, day two. Day three, we wake up. At this point, you know, we're only on day three of what we're expecting a 10-day hunt to be. Um, totally in no rush, right? Like we're like, okay, we've seen a few bears now. He wasn't the first bear we saw. We saw some others, but there was some cubs. Um, we're in no rush, you know, like we know we have essentially all the time in the world, it feels like now, to punch one more tag. Um, so we go out, I believe it was that morning, and we're getting water again up this creek. And as we're walking around the corner, sure enough, there is a solo bear sitting on the side of the bank. I mean, only couldn't have been more than a quarter mile from camp. Um, so he goes and grabs his bow, and we try to make a stalk on this thing. And unfortunately, these bears know, man. Like they just know how to play the place that they live. He was on the opposite side of the bank, you know, wind blowing down the creek. And so between it being an open area of, oh, I don't know, 95 yards or so between us and him, and the wind blowing right to his face, like he just and out was the larger part of the bay. So if you approach from that way, he would see you. If you approach from the top, he'd smell you. If you approach from the front, you're right in the middle of the open. And that wasn't the first time that happened either. They're really good at putting themselves in places that they have the advantage.
Hmm.
So he tried to make a stalk on that. We just couldn't get any closer than I think like 90 yards, and he didn't want to make that type of shot. And so we just let the bear be. Went back to camp, came up with a plan for the day, and that plan was to um, go travel down towards the ocean in the larger part of the bay and just glass all day long. And this was so moving down towards the larger part of the bay, we were going to glass back into not only a big open portion of wood line with some grass on it, but also a few creeks that ran into the bay as well. And so we were trying to get ourselves in an advantageous position to glass. And so we go down there. We walk down there, and I said to him, I said, well, let's take the packs. We don't need them now. And if we come back the same way, we don't really need them, right? We're living in waders, basically. So as long as the water isn't higher than chest level, it really doesn't matter. Some of our stuff might get wet in the pack, so what? So we work our way down there. We're glassing. Oh man, I think we glassed 8 to 10 hours just sitting there up against a big washed up log, huge washed up log. Um, Another nice day too. So we're glassing all day, see plenty of moose. The one nice thing about those Southeast Island hunts, which I think is unique, is when that tide comes in, oh my goodness. Just because you're not seeing the thing you're hunting, it doesn't mean you're not entertained. The amount of wildlife down there, oh man. The tide comes in and you get sea otters wandering into the bay, you get seals wandering into the bay, porpoises. It's crazy how much activity there is in the bay when the tide comes in. So it's even in slow times, it's pretty entertaining just to watch everything else happening around you.
That is
Had a
cool.
mink, yeah, yeah. Had a mink pretty much crawl up on my leg. Had no idea we were there. Uh, um, so yeah, saw some moose and saw some deer, stuff like that. Never saw a bear. So we packed up, decided to start heading back um, as tide was coming in. But as we were heading back, right, we were looking into those creeks. But of course, those creeks have these corners that we can't see around. So our idea was let's work to the other side of the bay and then just walk up those creeks as it's getting dark. And as like you had mentioned, the amount of daylight there is pretty wild. So we're talking, this is probably 10 o'clock at night or something. You're doing this, and you're still within the realm of shooting light.
Yeah.
And so we're walking up these bays, and sure enough, I believe it was the second, or the creeks, and sure enough, I believe it was the second creek we walked up. There is a black bear. I mean, just vegging out on this little grass tidal island that's probably the size of a living room in the middle of a creek. And because tide was low, right, all the grass is exposed. He is
Hmm.
just sprawled out, face in the dirt, eating grass. And so the same. This is, I think, maybe the third. Yeah, this would be the third stalk he made with his bow. Same situation. This bear is, looking down the creek, kind of towards the larger bay where we're approaching. The wind is coming down the creek, so he can smell behind him, and he's in the middle of this creek. And there's a fair amount of open area because of the tides and all that stuff. So it's probably 100 yards maybe from wood line to wood line. And there's no way to get through the woods quietly. It's just so thick in there. And so it's again another example of like, man, they put themselves in these positions that you just you can't stalk them in.
Hmm.
Um, and then this bear had everything else working for him too. So we sneak up, drop our bags. I have my rifle with me in case he wanted to use it. We get as close as we can get to some deadfall that's blocking us from getting any closer. And I think we were like 105 yards away. And he's like, that's not a shot I'm going to make. And I said, well, you can use my rifle if you want. I mean, that's the whole reason he brought his bow. I brought my rifle. He always had a backup. And, a little, I think, maybe disappointed because he's a great archery hunter and a very dedicated archery hunter. He's like, I don't know. What do you think? And I was like, and I told him, I looked at him and I said, well, it depends how much you want to go salmon fishing. So he goes, all right, give me the rifle.
Yeah.
So we sit there and just watch him for a little while. I mean, that bear had every opportunity to get out of this situation. We had some blacktail come out of the woods right by him and immediately just pinpoint us and just started snorting at us and stomping their foot. And I was like, oh, we are busted, man.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, that bear didn't give a lick, just kept eating grass. And then so the deer run off, and we're just sitting there because, like I said, I mean, this bear is just yard sailed. Like he is just legs out, sitting in the grass, just munching away what he could get without moving. I mean, he's at a total buffet. Um, and then we have some geese come up the creek from behind us and land between us and the bear in the water. And they saw us flying in, honking their face off at us because they saw us sitting there, right? And I'm like, oh, we're busted again. That bear didn't give a rip. He just kept sitting there eating grass. And so then the geese leave And then some more geese came, whatever. That bear just did not care. He was in the zone, just trying just trying to get all the grass he could get. So finally, we're sitting there, I don't know how long, and that bear is just still eating. I said, all right, we can't sit here forever, you know. I'm gonna like let's try to make some noise. I'm like slapping my hands together. I took a stick and started slapping the branches next to me on this deadfall that we're up against. Bear did not care at all. And so finally I stood up and just started snapping branches. And he eventually looked up, looked our direction, but with with interest, not with like alarm, just like, oh, what was that? And he gave just the perfect broadside shot. And so my buddy goes, should I shoot him? And I said, go ahead, man. And he just, I mean, he teed it up. I couldn't have placed that bullet any better if I walked up to that bear. Um, the bear took off, went into the creek, went into the woods, and we gave it, 15, 20 minutes or so. Not trying to push a bear in the woods, right? Like as thick as it is and dark as it is, and it's getting into evening now. So we go find a blood trail. Like you said, they don't make great ones. You'll find blood, but man, as it's starting to get dark and as thick and as dark as it is in this forest, it's not that easy to pick up. But we found them. We found them balled up about 15 yards inside the woods, and that was it. That was tag two punched.
Dang.
And that his bear, it has the thickest coat I've ever seen on a bear, man. It is crazy how thick that coat is. It's so thick and so jet black. I mean, it puts mine to shame, and mine's a really nice bear. So I was like, well, it might not be as big, but man, the coat you're getting off of this thing is incredible.
Yeah. So
Um,
cool.
yeah, it was such it's so surreal. The amount of effort and time and the waiting and the anticipation, and it's it. Two tags punched in what, 3 days, maybe four. I don't totally remember, but um, so because it's you know how gnarly it is, we dragged the bear out whole. Since it was only 15 yards and it's like up and down and over some dead trees and some holes. We get it to the bank of the creek and we start working on it. We get it all taken care of. And it took, oh goodness, I don't know, two hours maybe to really get everything taken care of. And we were at this point we were using headlamps. Um, this is where the forethought worked in our advantage. Um, by the time we got done with that bear, that creek had rose, I would bet 6 to 6.5 feet, and the bear was no longer on the bank of the creek; it was at the water.
Dang.
Yeah, and so I drug it up into the woods a little bit. I don't want that stuff getting into the water, and cleaned up our area. We brought our rafts with us. Thank goodness we did, because we were on the other side. We would have been sleeping there had we not. So we brought our rafts, uh, got those inflated, threw everything in there, and we paddled ourselves back to camp. And I got this. It's a picture that looks cool, but means even more when you were there as a memory. I think it was. I think it's 2:15 a.m. or something like that when we're actually finally paddling back. Um, there's still light. It's still not totally dark. But it's dead quiet. You're in the middle of Alaska on a raft, tag punched, paddling your way in the dark back to camp. I mean, what a hunt.
Yeah. So cool.
Oh yeah, it really was. So day four. Ah, that's right. Yes. So day four, we wake up, given it was so late. So we got back to camp into day four, it being so early in the morning. Wake up. We're in no rush now. Now it's all about, taking care of the meat, getting more fleshing out of the hides, and just, what do we want to do? We got 5.5 more days. And so we talked about that a little bit, right? I mean, it's nice here, but you can go to town and find a fishing charter too.
Hmm.
So I sent a message to the float plane pilot via my inReach, and he said, "All right, yeah, I can't get up today, but I can get you tomorrow morning if you're good with that." And I said, "Yep, we'll time the tides and we'll float ourselves out of the bay and meet you." He actually dropped us off on an island across from our bay because the bay's so shallow.
Hmm.
He didn't want to risk what the tides would be and all that, so he dropped us off on an island about a mile and a quarter across the strait, where there's a real deep drop off that he could pull right up to the island on. So yeah, we just got everything prepped and started started getting things ready while enjoying our last full day there. I did a little fishing. He had a lot to manage with his meat and stuff like that, and there wasn't really much I really wanted to do or could help him with, like with the fleshing and stuff like that. He was well on his way to doing that himself. So I said, "Do you need any help?" "No?" "Okay. I'm just going to go find a rock somewhere." And, I brought a little collapsible travel rod just to entertain myself, and caught a few little teeny fish just to kill some time. That was a good time. Um, Nothing worth keeping or eating, but killed some
Yeah.
time, you know. Uh, and we just got everything prepped. So morning of day 5, pack up camp, which it's a lot heavier now, and this is this is where having those cargo pockets in the rest comes in handy.
Yeah.
He put all his meat in the cargo areas, and all of his bags and stuff inside with himself. I, on the other hand, do not have the cargo area, so I have meat and everything in the compartment or in the middle of the raft, and I'm sitting on top of everything. And it worked out fine. It did work out just fine. It was just, um, I don't know. It would have been nicer to have the cargo pockets at this point.
Hmm.
But yeah, we worked our way all the way out to the island, waited for the plane. Really good timing too, by the way. We timed it as to be leaving as the tide was going out, but the float took so long that the tide started like flattening out and maybe even shifting in a little bit because of the wind, not the tide itself, but the wind was pushing some
Okay.
water in, which, man, made it a real pain to get out of that bay. Um, so it took significantly longer than we had planned for, because we were hoping, tide going out, man, we're just gonna just casually paddle and just kind of float our way out of this bay. But because of the wind going the opposite direction, that wasn't the case. But we ended up getting to the island 10 minutes before the float plane came, so it was just perfect
Oh,
timing.
wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
perfect timing. Yeah, yep.
So, did you guys both end up doing rugs with the full hides?
I'm not sure what he's doing. I just had mine tanned.
Okay.
I didn't
Like
do a
soft tanned.
rug. Yep, you got it. I just did a soft tan. And then, I'm getting the skull's getting Euroed. Actually, I'm supposed to get it back this week.
Oh, sweet.
And uh, one of the things is, when we were cutting my bear up in particular, I'm using these. I really, really like the Federal Terminal Ascent 200
Hmm.
grains. So, I mean, them suckers pack a punch. Um, Well, it went through the bear, and I found it when I was skinning my bear. It was between right in the armpit and the skin, so it was perfectly mushroomed on the other side of the bear. So I'm like, "Oh, I'm keeping that." And so
Heck
I
yeah.
have it. Yeah, I have it now. What I'm going to do when I get the bear back, I'm assuming this week or next week, I'm just going to let it sit in its teeth.
Yeah. That'll be cool.
It,
As I'm sitting here looking at a couple of bear skulls, and as you were saying you had a bullet, I'm like, I bet he's gonna put it between the teeth. That'll look
yep,
cool.
yep.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear something super interesting, well, I'll get to getting back to game and fish and all that first. So pilot picks us up. He's like, "Oh, hey, how'd you guys do?" and all that. Which, by the way, be weight conscious when you're on those planes. He told us how much he could get, transport back and forth. Whew, we were right at the cusp, because the bears they were big bears. Um, and so he was like, "No, you guys are good. Just, man, if you shot something else, if it was fall and we like tagged a blacktail too, he'd be making 2 trips."
Hmm.
So it was really good. as far as that goes. So we get back, and the pilot says, "All right, what's your plan now?" And we said, "Man, we didn't plan this far ahead. Like, we did not think we'd have success this fast, if at all, punching 2 tags in 10 days." And he goes, "Okay, well, first thing you need to do is, you're gonna need a place to stay, and then you're gonna need you need to get the game and fish, and then, which all these things we've thought about, but we never acted on because, when, like, we didn't know the when
Hmm.
this would be the case." I'm gonna tell you what, if anybody doesn't know this, people in Alaska, they are the nicest people you will ever meet. Like, they're so self-sufficient, right? Them communities are so self-sufficient and so community focused because of their remoteness. They, on the drop of a dime, they will ruin their whole day to help you. I've never met anybody like that.
Yeah.
And so, he said, "All right, well, I'll drive you into town. I'll drive you over to the hotel and see what they got available." And we got a spot there, and then we called the game and fish office, set up a time for the next morning to come in and get everything checked, talk to the people. Um, they have like a community cold storage. I assume because of the sustenance living, right? You have to have a place for all the fish you catch and crab you catch and bear and moose you shoot and all that if you don't have capacity in your house. So they had a community cold storage he got us in contact with and drove us over there. I mean, he helped us out so much in that way, with some of the logistical parts that we had thought about but had no way to really execute on, which was so great. So
Yeah.
the next morning, we got a place to stay in town. The next morning, we called him and he said, "Yeah, I'll be over. I'll get you guys over to Game and Fish." So we over to Game and Fish and get our bears checked. The lady at Game and Fish who did it, who measured everything, she was happy. Like, she said, "You'd be surprised how many people they don't follow the regulations. Even if in the field, they did everything right, some of the regulations, like specifically, like having the sex attached to the animal, she's like, you have no idea how often that doesn't happen."
Mm.
Um, and we did everything to the book, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm really happy with how you guys, executed all this because you guys you kept everything attached. You brought the meat out like you're supposed to. You had everything in an easy manner to, like, for her to attach the tags and measure and all that stuff." And she said their management goal for the area we were hunting is, I believe, 18.5-inch skulls. So they want to keep it like, yeah, it's an opportunity hunt, but also like a quality hunt.
Hmm.
Um, his was, my buddy's measured out at 18 and 5/16, and mine was 20 and 7/16.
Dang.
Yep. And so she was like,
Solid.
"Look at you guys." Yeah, she's like, "You guys are doing exactly what we want you to do to keep the good age classes and all that." So yeah, super happy. And again, in the field, I didn't think much of it. And she goes, "This might be a Boone and Crockett bear."
Yeah.
And so I went and looked into it, and fast forward now to December, the 60-day drying period and all of this stuff. I did have a score officially scored. I did send the Boone and Crockett, and I think 2 weeks ago, um, they sent me the approval. It did get approved for Boone and Crockett.
Heck yeah, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, not something I'm ever looking to. I'm never looking for that kind of trophy animal. I'm always shooting for just like a good representation of a species. Like, I
Hmm.
don't. You can't, like I said, you can't eat antlers. It's so it's just a nice representation of the species. All I'm ever looking for, and that one certainly surpassed it.
That's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, yeah. So the next 4 days, we just kind of bummed around town. We called around for a charter. That was a little hard to do because they kind of want they're either booked or they want at least 4 people on the charter.
Hmm.
So we did find somebody willing to work with us. We did have to pay for like a third person, if you want to call it that, to go out on a salmon charter. And I mean, we caught our salmon and some other fish, and then we moseyed around town. Did a little gift shopping for the kids and the wife and all that, and packed everything up and came home. Coming home, uh, the getting the bags weighed and all that. Ooh, man, we had to shuffle some stuff around.
Just to get it all divvied
Oh,
up.
holy cow. Yeah. We had the capacity for it, right? Because huge benefit. We used the cold storage, so everything was froze solid,
Yeah.
right? So we didn't have to worry about things really melting, right? The trip on the way back, I don't remember how long it was. Maybe it was over a day, I think. Um, but everything's froze solid, and if it's in the cargo area in a plane, it's pretty chilly in there anyway, right? So we weren't too worried about things thawing out. That was never our concern. Our concern was weight. um, and so I put my cooler on there that's packed now with the bear and the hide, and then I had my other bag which I put the salmon in because when you come back they'll have people you can pay them to flay it, and they like commercially vacuum seal it and all that stuff, um, which is really nice, and then flash freeze it. The My cooler, man, it was that I think deboned the meat I took home, deboned, which mind you, it was only like 90% of what I took from that bear, and deboned. It was, I think, 130 pounds in just meat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's a lot
so,
off a bear. Yeah.
dude, yes, I know. That's when it also hit me where like I was thinking about like the elk, like I think the elk I shot last year, I don't know, I think I got like 170 pounds maybe deboned off of it. And I was like, 120 some pounds. Whoa, hold on. That means that's a pretty big bear.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how big that thing would have been in the fall. But
Yeah.
so yeah, we're in the airport. Luckily, it's a team built airport. They got bags open. We're shuffling stuff around because I put that I put my cooler in there, and they're like, "Ooh, that's going over to cargo." And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hold on." So we finally got all the weight at least acceptable. But a tip for people that are coming back with a game, like make sure you kind of think through a little bit of how you want to divvy that up, because I think two of my bags, I believe, were overweight. Um, Depending on how all that plays out, I think I paid $450 in baggage fees to get back.
Hmm.
And I know it would have been cheaper had I had another bag to make some of the other ones equal out to 50 pounds or less.
Right.
Right. So that's a little logistical tip there of like make sure you have the bags to kind of equal things out. You'll save $150 right off the bat. If you can, even if it's more bags but less weight, it still pays off.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's good info.
Yeah.
That's so, I mean, that everything you talked about in that last section, that we always get so many questions on logistics.
Hmm.
Everything worked out well for you guys, right? Like you're in town, you have some
Super
help,
well.
you can have cold storage, all that stuff. It makes it,
It,
when you
yeah.
have that, it makes everything so dang easy. But those are just
Yeah.
all the questions to ask ahead of time, like regardless of kind of where you're
Yes,
going. And sure,
they
you may not
are.
know exactly what that looks like or how much time you have, but I would just, that's part of the research that's important is, yeah, getting to Alaska, having the gear, doing the hunts, all that, yes.
Hmm.
But if you are successful, then what? Like make
Then
sure that
what?
that research
Yes.
is done ahead of time.
You got it. You got it. And we knew, yes, Game and Fish has to check all this stuff out. We knew what hotels were in town. It's just, but when? Whew, we don't know that part, right? And so
Yeah, and
having
you never
somebody
will.
there, no, you no, you won't. And having somebody there, like if somebody's calling because they need a float pilot or a bush pilot or whatever, yeah, make sure you ask these questions. I mean, a lot of these communities are pretty small, and they're intimately familiar with everybody in town, and they got everybody's
Hmm.
number on speed dial. Like they're just as friendly as the next person. They're willing to help you out, but just make sure you ask the right questions as far as part of your research to like understand what's the process after.
Hmm.
And that, yeah, that worked out really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and pick up the phone. Most people take everyday life outside of Alaska and just all of us in the lower 48. Most people turn to the internet and Google
Hmm.
and whatever else before they'll ever pick up the phone.
Yep.
And I would say do the exact opposite for Alaska. Like start calling,
Uh,
it's just like a different community, a different connection. You'll find
yes.
more information, you'll meet more people, and
Oh,
yeah, just pick
absolutely.
up the dang phone.
Absolutely. And another tip too, and I do this with every hunt. Every hunt I go on out of state. Actually, no, that's not true. Even in Michigan, I do the same thing. When I have a tag I've never had before, you better believe like one of my first calls is to the biologist in that unit.
Hmm.
After I do my research and have enough to understand the area and the population, success, stuff like that, once I have enough to ask some educated questions about how I want my hunt to go and the information I want to know that may influence how I plan my hunt, I'm calling that biologist.
Yep. Yeah, and you're doing that after you've done some research, because if you
Yes.
call
Yeah,
and have no context and don't know what questions
that's
to ask, you're
correct.
not going to
Right.
get good information.
No, no, you need to know,
Yeah.
success rates, generally the population in the area, like historically some of the weather. In this case, tides were a factor too, which I
Yep.
knew, but I didn't know how much of a factor they would be. And once you have enough to ask some educated questions, call. Questions that might be pivot points for how you plan a hunt, call. I know in the past I've called, like in Colorado, you'll call the Craig office or something, and you're like, hey, you ask a question, and it's I mean, darn near every time I talk to a biologist, I always get a response like, you know what, that's a really good question. I normally ask people, have people call me and go, hey, where should I hunt? And it's like they have their scripted answer. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
they have their generally go over here, and guess what? Everybody's going over there.
Yep.
So try to find those little like habitat nooks and crannies that people aren't thinking about or looking at. Ask questions about that.
Yep. Better questions, better answers.
You got it. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
I'm sure we could keep talking for another hour about things, which we don't have time for, but anything that you want to hit that we haven't already?
I would say as far as gear goes, um, some of the stuff, and I know some of these are from you guys too. The Hydra packs, incredible.
Yeah, they're great.
Oh man, yes. I've used like the MSR, I think what's it called? Pocket Rocket, I think I used in the past, and I've used the tablets and stuff like that. There is no replacement for just one being able to just squeeze stuff out really, really easily and being able to collect really, really fast and have, I think mine was the 3 liter one, having 3 liters of dirty water on hand as well.
Hmm.
Really, really valuable. Saves you lots of time. If you ever had the MSR Pocket Rocket, saves you your wrist from cramping. Um, my buddy brought I think it's called Lino Life beef broth, just as like an afternoon, after dinner or midday, like hot drink.
Hmm.
We'll never go in the backcountry again without it.
What was it called? What Life?
I think it's called Lino Life or Lino
Okay.
Life. Yeah,
Okay.
you can find it on Amazon.
Cool.
I don't know if it's organic or not, but it's just like a powdered beef broth you mix with some water. I mean, when it's cold out or it's wet out, just something simple like a nice warm drink with a little bit of protein, a little bit of substance to it.
Yeah.
Really, really, really nice to have. um, Peaks headlamp was awesome. The Soto new river pot, I bought that. I had been using a Camp Chef, but I wanted something a little more condensed. That was really nice. Yeah. Waders, that was a good purchase. I bought the cheapest breathable waders I could find on Amazon because I have a really good pair for duck hunting and stuff like that, but I wasn't packing those. I knew that was not that kind of weather, right? It wasn't icy out.
Hmm.
So I bought a cheap Bass Dash waders on Amazon. Guess what? They held up great. Believe it or not, they held up great.
That's good.
And yeah, and they were pretty comfortable. Like they fit I went through a lot of, even Sims and all of those, a lot of waders when I was prepping for this trip because I knew we were going to be walking a lot. I knew it was going to be wet. So it wasn't an option not to wear waders, in my opinion, being on a tidal flat and all that. Um, but I'm, my experience as an infantryman in the army in the past, I am wildly picky about footwear. So I went through, I don't know how many orders from Amazon with waders, making sure whatever the boot was in that wader fit me exactly how I wanted it to fit. Because I knew we were going to be doing a lot of walking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those are some of the highlights.
Cool.
As far as like what you had mentioned earlier, just do it. If you want to go to Alaska, the truth is, and you can make excuses all day, and I did for a few years. You can put it off forever and make excuses. It's never going to get easier, right? At some point, like these moose tags and stuff like that, they're not going to be over the counter. And yes, logistically, it's hard to get there. Well worth it. I'm going again 100%. If I can make it an annual thing, it's going to be an annual thing. Hunting Idaho and Alaska, not Alaska, and Montana and Colorado and all that. It's great. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But when you get to Alaska and you see how wild it is, I mean, it's like getting out of the kiddie pool and going into the adults pool. Like it is a whole different level. Level. So make it happen. Just do it. You won't regret it. I promise. Even if you don't come back successful, you're not going to regret that adventure.
Well, what an awesome adventure. Congrats to Ryan. And once again, to you guys listening, if you have anything for us, whether it is a hunt listener story or maybe just some questions for the podcast, reach out by email. You can send that message to podcast@exomountaingear.com. If you're enjoying the show, it does help us out if you can leave a rating or review in your podcast app. And if you haven't yet, be sure to hit subscribe or follow in the podcast app so that you receive future episodes automatically. And we'll talk to you soon.